High-frequency words. For stronger reading comprehension. In this video, we will cover a list of high-frequency words that can help improve students' reading comprehension. These words are particularly useful for those preparing for the IELTS, GRE, and GMAT exams. We will start by examining the meanings of the following words, and then we will use them in a short story to illustrate their practical use. Abate, abdicate, aberrant, abeyance, abject, abate. This word means to decrease or to reduce. For example, the storm started to abate as the winds died down. Abdicate. This word means to give up a position, right, or power. Synonyms: surrender, hand over, give up. For example, the king abdicated his throne and went into exile. Aberrant. This word means to deviating from what is normal. Synonyms: abnormal. For example, the scientist discovered an aberrant specimen that did not match any known species. Abeyance. This word means to temporary suppression or suspension. Synonyms: postponed, unfinished, pending. For example, the project was put in abeyance until funding was secured. Abject. This word means to describe someone or something that is in a state of extreme misery, hopelessness, or humiliation. It can also refer to something that is extremely unpleasant, degrading, or low in quality. Synonyms: miserable, pitiful. For example, the homeless man looked abject, shivering in the cold rain. Let's practice these words in a story. Once upon a time, there was a powerful king named Frederick who had ruled over his kingdom for many years. However, he had grown old and frail, and his mind had become increasingly aberrant. Despite his diminishing faculties, King Frederick refused to abdicate his throne, instead choosing to let his kingdom fall into abeyance as he clung to power. His subjects watched in abject horror as the once great ruler became more and more detached from reality. The people pleaded with the king to abdicate, to allow someone younger and more capable to take the throne and lead the kingdom into a new era of prosperity. However, the king remained stubborn and refused to abate his hold on power. As the months went on, the kingdom suffered under the king's erratic behavior. The economy began to abate, as trade and commerce ground to a halt. The army, once the most powerful in the region, became abject and disorganized under the king's neglect. The people grew increasingly restless and began to openly rebel against the king's rule. They demanded that he abdicate the throne and allow them to choose a new leader who could lead them out of their misery. But the king refused to listen, lost in his own world of aberrant thoughts and delusions. Finally, a group of powerful lords and knights banded together to overthrow the king and force him to abdicate his throne. They stormed the castle, and after a fierce battle, they were able to capture the king and his loyal followers. With the king deposed, the kingdom was thrown into chaos. For a time, it seemed as though the rebellion had been in abeyance, and the people struggled to survive without a leader. But eventually, a new king was chosen, one who was wise and just and who worked tirelessly to rebuild the kingdom. Under the new king's leadership, the kingdom slowly began to abate its troubles. The economy recovered, and the people once again began to prosper. The army was reorganized and became a powerful force once more, ready to defend the kingdom from any threat. The people looked back on the reign of King Frederick with a mixture of sadness and anger. They could see now that his aberrant behavior had been a sign of his growing senility, and that his refusal to abdicate the throne had caused untold harm to the kingdom. In the end, they were grateful for the new king, who had been willing to take on the responsibility of leading the kingdom out of its darkest hour. They knew that under his wise and just rule, the kingdom would never again fall into abeyance. Let's practice another story. John had always been a successful businessman, with a thriving company and a comfortable life. However, in recent years, his behavior had become increasingly aberrant. His business began to suffer because of his behavior, and profits started to abate. However, John remained stubborn, refusing to abdicate his position as CEO and relinquish control to someone more capable. His employees watched in abject horror as the once great businessman became more and more detached from reality. As his business fell into abeyance, John's personal life also began to suffer. His family and friends grew increasingly distant as they struggled to deal with his aberrant behavior. He rarely leaving his home and only communicating with the outside world. As time went on, John's mental state continued to deteriorate, and he became increasingly unpredictable. His employees, worried about the future of the company, began to plot his ouster, hoping to force him to abdicate his position as CEO. Their plan succeeded, and John was forced to step down from his position. However, the damage had already been done, and the company struggled to recover. In the aftermath of his downfall, John finally began to acknowledge the severity of his situation. He sought help and began to work on his mental health, slowly coming to terms with the fact that his behavior had been aberrant. As he worked to rebuild his life, John was forced to confront the consequences of his actions. He realized that his refusal to abdicate his position as CEO had caused harm to those around him, and he was forced to confront the abject reality of his situation. Over time, John began to heal, and his life slowly began to abate the chaos and uncertainty that had plagued him for so long. He realized that it was never too late to make a change. In the end, John emerged from his struggles a stronger and more compassionate person. He had learned the importance of humility and self-reflection, and he was determined to never let his behavior become aberrant again.